Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and I have my beautiful nephew, Benjamin Hardy here. I've interviewed him before, and the last time we did this, you were remote. We were on a Zoom call because he lives in Florida, but he's here now with his amazing three kids. He's got six kids, but his three oldest, they came out skiing. So I wanted to grab you before you flew back to Florida and talk to you about your new book. So I am lucky that I've already read it. I got a copy before it got sent off to the publisher, but it is done and it's spectacular. So what I want to do is maybe you can tell us about why your future self. What's the whole concept behind it, and maybe what sparked this idea for you? And did it come to you like a long time ago, or is this a new concept that you just came up with?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I love Jane and grateful to be here. So, yeah, the new book is called Be Your Future Self Now. And I first came upon this idea when I was actually writing my book, Personality Isn't Permanent. So, I wrote a book a few years ago called Personality Isn't Permanent. And while I was diving into the research on that book, I came across this little part of, they call it kind of a vine or a line of research that I'd never seen before, all about future self and all about, your future self concept. And so I fell in love with it when I was writing that book, but I was already so deep into writing the book at the time that it just became kind of a small portion of that book. But that was about 3 years ago, and so ever since then, it's been my main idea of focus. Even though I've written different books since then, this has been the idea that's just consumed my thinking. And so, I don't know, do you want me to just give a little bit of detail on like what future self is, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's really interesting you say that because I could tell from the conversations we've had over these years, like that concept kind of pokes its head in on a consistent basis. Like I know what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer, is at the end of the year, you'll send me a text and say, "Hey, what are your goals for the next year? Like, what are your, like even just this last December, you're like, okay, 2022 is coming. What are your three focus?" So it's kind of like that times 10, but I love this concept because I think most people tend to live in the moment without really realizing that the things that they do in the moment have such a huge impact. I mean, it goes so much deeper than that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of details. So this is a great example, but I have a friend named Lee Brower, um, and he actually every January 1st he actually creates a future self time capsule from his future self a year in advance. So since we're now in 2022, what Lee did on January 1st of 2022 is he made a video as his future self on January 1st of 2023. And so basically he's speaking as his future self, and he says, "Hey Lee, if you're seeing this video, congratulations, you made it through another year." And then he just goes on to list all the things that from his future self's perspective happen throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, it's kind of part of his goal setting process. He doesn't watch the time capsule video. He then watches what he said the year before, so at the end of the year he re-watches his video that he made the year before, and then he makes the next one. And he said that his predictions are usually pretty great. And it actually does tap into a lot of the research. And so what a lot of the research on future self says is that it's actually easier to get into the mindset of your future self and to bring your future self back to you than it is to go to your future self. Obviously, whenever you set a goal or whenever you think of a vision of where you want to be, you're actually thinking about your future self and where you want to be. But it's quite easy and nice to actually just bring your future self to you. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. Lee did that where he films a video of himself talking as his future self. And it's really powerful to actually think from the situation of your future self and then to talk to your current self. You can use that as guidance.
How does he do that? Like, what's his verbiage?
I mean, he pretty much just films probably like so, oh, that's the dog. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I didn't know what that was.
We got stuff going on here
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is totally fine.
So his videos are short. His video is probably 5 minutes long, and he talks about the things that happen and also the unexpected things that he wasn't expecting to happen.
Really?
Yeah. So in his video, he'll say, "Lee, here are the things that you accomplished and did, and the experiences you had, and also there were things that you didn't expect to happen, and here are some of them."
Wow, that is fascinating. I mean, it really makes me want to do one right now,
Yeah.
like with that kind of a concept
It's
in mind.
it's beautiful. I recommend everyone to make a future self time capsule in different formats.
Hmm.
So
I
Lee's are
like
very
it.
short. They're short videos. in the book, I tell two different stories separate from Lee of future self time capsules. One of them is myself. So me and my wife, Lauren, got married in 2012 on September 1st. And so actually we're about to hit our 10-year anniversary. And on our 1-year anniversary, we made a future self time capsule for our 10-year anniversary. So we made a video almost 9 years ago. We actually filmed videos and wrote letters to our future selves. And so I haven't seen them. We put them in a mason jar, and it's been on our shelf ever since. But I remember to some degree, so this was 9 years ago, this was back in 2013, we were visualizing and thinking about where our lives would be. And this is one of the interesting things about the research on future self is obviously that like your future self is always going to be far different than you expect. So I guarantee when I go back, like when I open a time capsule, I'll have vastly underpredicted how much my life would change, because back then we were living in her parents' basement. I was, just rejected from graduate school, and we had no kids, whereas now I have a PhD, we live in Orlando, we have 6 kids. I'm a professional writer and entrepreneur, and so like there's so many things I couldn't have predicted, and that's a big aspect of what the research shows is that most people think that their future self is actually going to be a lot closer to their current self than is actually true, and that's actually a fixed mindset.
So think about this. You've actually been thinking about this concept for 9 years at least. If you did a time capsule not about what was happening right then, but where you want it to be in 10 years.
Yeah, we were thinking about our future selves. Future self is just a nice way to look at it. A lot of people think about goals or vision, but when you really think about it, it's really your future self that you're thinking about.
Dang. Well, and I know one of the things that you actually told me this, and I did a little video earlier for you guys about one of your stories in your book about your 3-year-old daughter Phoebe, and how when you were just starting to write this book, how this was so like such a huge moment of realization. So maybe you can just tell that story really quick, because I love it from your perspective, because your kids are amazing, and I honestly wish I'd have known this concept when I was raising my kids, because I would give anything to wrap my arms around a 3-year-old Brian and just hug on, love on him.
If the version of you could go back, with your wisdom and knowledge and perspective. So one thing that's certainly true is that everything that's going on in your life right now is infinitely more important to your future self than it is for you, because you're just living the day-to-day life. So it's easy for you to, go through the motions a little bit and just, kind of be tired or exhausted and stuff like that. And so for me, because I have 6 kids, ages 14 to 1, and we have 2 little 3-year-old twin girls, it's easy for me just to come home from an entire day of work and just to kind of come home to a chaos of 6 kids and just to kind of zone out or to look at my phone or just to kind of be tired. But there's a quote actually from Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was very unique actually, because all of the psychologists, not all of them, but the vast majority of psychologists at that time, such as Freud, Adler, most of the mainstream psychological thought was the idea that if you wanted to understand who a person was, you needed to understand their past. That was kind of the core aspect of Freud's theory, was if we really want to know who you are and why you're acting the way you are and why you have dysfunctions or why you have the goals you have, all we got to do is look at your past. And Frankl was very different. Frankl believed that to understand who a person was, you needed to understand their future, their goals, their aspirations, the meanings that they felt inspired to fulfill. And actually, Frankl talked about in Man's Search for Meaning that the moment a person lost a sense of hope and meaning and purpose towards their future, that's when their present really became messed up, especially in a concentration camp. Once they lost hope, they actually physically and literally died shortly after. But one of the things that Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning is he said, and this is a terrible paraphrase, but he basically said that the best way to gain responsibleness for your life is to first imagine that you've already lived this moment once and that you acted as terribly as you're about to act. And he said, so first, just imagine that you've already lived this moment and you acted poorly, like you're probably going to act now, and then think that you can actually come back and relive that moment again and do it better. And so he was kind of thinking to the idea of you could actually just, for the first time, live your life better. And so I was thinking about that quote, and I was thinking about all the research on future self one day while I was driving home, and I just thought to myself, so in 20 years from now, I'm at the writing of the book, I was 33, I'm now 34, but I just thought, okay, so I'm 33 years old. In 20 years from now, my future self is going to be 53. But also, in 20 years from now, my son Caleb is going to be 34 years old. my daughter Jordan's going to be 32, Logan's going to be 30, Zora and Phoebe, these two little twins, are going to be 23 years old. Rex, my little boy, is going to be 21. And so for my 53-year-old future self, all of that person, the 53-year-old version of me, which is a different version than me, so different I can't even imagine, but that person has kids all in their 20s and 30s. And so I thought to myself, what would that version of me give to just come back and live my life for one day? You know, I'm driving home from work. I know I'm going to come home to excited, busy kids in a chaotic household. And I just thought, how would my future self, if they could just come in a time portal and relive this moment, how differently would they live it than I'm just about to go do? You know, usually I just take it for granted. And so I just thought to myself, and I was thinking these thoughts literally in my neighborhood. I pulled to the side of the road because I was wanting to be present. I wanted to actually be intentional about who I was. And so I just thought, how would my future self be? And so I just for that moment, just decided I'm just going to pretend to be my 53-year-old future self and that I get to relive this moment. And so then I pulled up to my house, and my little daughter, Phoebe, who's super cute, and I actually in the book took a picture, but she was running outside and she was just yelling, "Daddy, Daddy," and she just wanted to play. And I would begin, because I was trying to kind of embody my future self. I just thought, you know, this would be potentially, this would be the first time that version of me saw this little girl for like 20 years. And so it's just amazing how much immediate love I had for her, and I'm not rushing the moment like I usually do. I was so present. That's what's really crazy actually is that being connected to the future is actually the way to actually really appreciate the present and to appreciate this moment right now, because from your future self's perspective, you are literally sitting on a gold mine. And so
we talk about that all the time too, about being present and living in the now. I mean, we throw those words around so fast, but then do we actually do it? So that's actually what I love about the whole thought of what would my future self give to come back in this moment,
and how would they handle this moment?
Exactly.
What would they see?
Exactly. Yeah.
So basically I got out of my car, and just because I was thinking this is an extremely precious moment, I get to come back, you know, or my future self gets to come back and actually play with his 3-year-old daughter who's now 23 years old. I just kind of embodied that, played with her, was not rushed at all, and I just felt complete love. And I actually felt kind of a sense of awe and mind blown, just kind of looking around at my neighborhood and just kind of seeing the setting, because again, from my future self's perspective, this is all memory. You know, sometimes you go back to like your old neighborhood and you just like, you know, all these memories flood back. And so,
well, let me ask you this. You had that one moment, but has this been something that you've been able to make a conscious effort to do on a more regular basis? Mm-hmm. Since, I mean, because I think that's the whole thing, is not to forget this concept, is to find ways to embody that. So
yeah,
I know you have, the way that you broke down the book into 3 segments is really, really powerful. Because for me, it felt really not only easy to read, but it all came together. So maybe share how you came up with that. How you structured the information so that it can be the most impactful for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the title of the book, just again, is called Be Your Future Self Now. And so the whole book is set up actually to help you tap into your desired future self, so that you can actually be a lot more intentional right now. Actually, one of the things that Aristotle said, he had a concept called final cause. And basically from his perspective, the thing that makes human beings more intelligent and different than, call it, plants and animals, is that we can actually imagine goals, and then we can organize our life to achieve those goals. I mean, even, you know, the shelves behind us, someone at one point had the idea or the goal to build those, and then now we're just seeing the intelligent design. We're seeing physical creation. Even this shirt, at one point this was just a goal of someone's to make this shirt, and then they turned it into a physical reality. And that was basically what I did with my book. The book didn't just accidentally appear. It was intelligently designed because I had a vision and a goal for it. And so part of the design of the book, it took a lot of work, because there's so many nuanced ideas about future self and understanding your future self and maximizing your future self. And so the book is organized in 3 sections. Part 1 is the 7 threats to your future self. And there's a lot of threats, obviously, to your future self, you know, as far as if you're not, like what a lot of the research shows is that if you're not actually connected to your future self, and you're not, you know, you don't care for them, you don't have empathy for their situation, and if you're not thinking about them, then you're going to make really dumb decisions in the present. You may get stuck in addictions or just waste your time scrolling on social media. Like you can, you know, basically that's what the research shows is that the quality of connection you have to your longer term future self, the better the decisions you have now.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like having compassion and empathy for your future self
totally
is a huge like that's a huge statement.
Yeah.
Because as a person who's, I'm in my early 60s now, to think about my future self.
5, 10, 20 years from
I
now.
know, like I can't even hardly find the word to describe, because I'll be, 20 years, I'll be almost 81.
Yeah.
And I'll have to have a lot of empathy for myself and compassion, because you think about, and it also, but I will tell you, it drives my daily decisions thinking about myself 20 years
Well,
from
that's
now.
why,
That's the whole
think about all the
point.
amazing supplements you create and things like that. I
Yeah,
mean, all of the
yeah.
health, that is being empathetic towards your future self.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're empathetic because you appreciate the things you do impact them, but you also appreciate the fact that they're a different person than you. And so, like,
Yeah.
you have empathy for them. Like when you have empathy for a person, you start to think about their perspective, where they're coming from, and that their perspective is different from yours, but you also appreciate that the things you do impact them. And so the more empathy you have for your future self, the more you start to think about what matters to them. Where are they coming from? What are their perspectives? What do they value? And then as a friend, and there's a lot of research on developing a friendship with your future self, also having a clear, vivid sense, becoming very vivid. One of the ways you can do this, by the way, similar to the story I told with Lee Brower, is just simply write a letter to yourself from your future self. So I could write a letter from my future self, age 80, and just say, Ben, you're 34 years old, but I just want to tell you about myself. I'm you, but age 80, and here's kind of where I'm coming from. And it can allow you to have empathy because you start to see from their perspective. And once you have more empathy for someone, you can start to kind of make better decisions. You care more for them. You would invest more in them. And that's actually that's actually one of the key aspects of that's one of the key aspects of connecting with your future self, but also expanding your future self, because everything you do to one in one way or another is either costing your future self. For example, if you have a bad habit of, let's just call it, eating junk food every day, you're kind of putting your future self in health debt. You know what I mean? Or if you just have a spending habit, your future self's going to be smaller and smaller. But if you really love someone, care about them, and have empathy towards them, you're going to start investing. And if you whatever you invest in, you become really committed to, and you start to love. And so, really, the key aspect of expanding your future self is to start investing in them. You can invest in learning, in knowledge, invest in your health. And every time you invest in your future self, not only do you become more connected to them, but your vision of them gets bigger. Think about just investing financially. Compound interest really grows. And so as you start investing, your future self starts getting bigger and bigger, and you start getting more and more connected. And that just creates this this really beautiful virtuous cycle where your future self keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you keep getting happier and happier in the present. They're very connected.
They are very connected. Okay, so that's the main part of the first segment, right?
Yeah, so there's really 3 parts, and I won't go too deep into all of them, but basically there's 7 threats to your future self, and I just go through, various threats to your future self, and then there's 7 truths about your future self, and these are just truths from research and from basically just wisdom of, like, what is the truth about your future self? One of those truths is that everything you do right now is driven by your view of your future self. And so you actually, the listener, do have a view of your future self, even though you maybe haven't spent that much time articulating or thinking about it. But most people's future self, sadly, is very short term. Getting to the weekend, paying the bills, maybe one vacation a year, but there's not a deep visualization, vividness, and creation. And so we're, majority of people are driven by a very short term reward, such as just jumping on the social media and getting a quick dopamine hit, or really urgent battles, whether that's just like paying the bills or stuff like that. And so most people's future self is kind of coming at them like a fire hose, and they're not stepping out, slowing down, and really expanding that vision and then getting vivid about it. And so basically there's just 7 truths about your future self. And then the final section of the book is 7 steps to be your future self. And that's just like a hyper practical section about clarifying your current purpose, to borrow Frankl, and how to actually go about aggressively becoming and being your future self now.
Yeah. Now, to me, when I read it, I actually read it it took me a couple days. I read about a third of it, and then the next time I picked it up, I read the rest of it. And I to me, you're never too old, you're never too young to have this concept in your life. And I think that what you were just saying about most of the time people's future self is coming at them like a fire hose is so true, because I think if you were to say, where are you going to be in 10 years? Most people, it's fuzzy. Like they think, oh, well, between here and there, I'll have time to exercise. I'll have time to get my finances in order. I'll have time. I'm not going to do it today because right now I'm too tired and I just want to. So I think that to have a more clear vision, and I love the empathy part for your future self, because it makes that so clear. It makes it so clear.
And it gets you deeply connected.
Yeah.
Well, but also think about it this way. For anyone listening, in 5 years from now, your future self is going to be somewhere. But from their perspective, your future self's perspective, if they could go back 5 years, again, there's no point in going back and trying and regretting your decision, but
right.
You don't have to, because your future self is in the future. From your future self's perspective, in any time frame, even at the end of this year, you're sitting on a gold mine of opportunity. There's infinite potential for you if you were to be tapped in. There's a million different directions you could go even in 2022. But let alone if you start projecting out maybe 5 years, 10 years, like from their perspective, you are current. We all undervalue our current position. We all undervalue the literal potential all around us. And what happens when you start connecting to a bigger future self is it starts to change what you're looking for. We all have what psychologists call selective attention. We see whatever it is we're looking for. And we miss a lot of things as well. We don't notice big opportunities, but we also don't notice just the fun little good things that those around us are doing, the lovely, just simple aspects of life. And so from your future self's perspective, where you're at right now is a brilliant position. You have crazy potential, not only for love and connection with those around you, but also to advance your life and to move forward and to live your dreams. And so I just think it's really important to never undervalue your current situation, because from your future self's perspective, it's actually an amazing position if you would understand it and see the value in it and utilize it.
Yeah, it's interesting because right as soon as I read your book, I went into my warehouse, and both my boys work for me, but Scott, who's my oldest, he turned 40 last year, and I had just finished reading the book, and it's so, as a person who's always been goal driven and goal oriented, and I would say for the most part my whole life I've thought about my future self, not on this level,
Totally.
but in interaction with my loved ones, your book changed me, because I went into my warehouse and here's Scott, who's 40, who's a beautiful human being.
He is beautiful.
And I went over to him, and I hug my kids every day. In fact, I hug my employees every day too, right? Just because that's who I am. But I had an interaction with him differently, because I was thinking, when I'm 80, what would I give to go back
and say one thing or give a hug?
Stand in that moment with my grown son who's raising his own kids. And I'm telling you, that your book shifted me in such a beautiful way. So
it reminds me of two things. One is ripple effects. So by you simply going, you could have just skipped that moment with Scott that day.
Yeah.
But because you were valuing the present more, and that's really an interesting aspect, is that by seeing the future and appreciating the future, you actually value the present more. It's like, holy cow, this is a sacred moment. Yeah. And so I wonder the ripple effects of that interaction on Scott, on your relationship. And so I just think it's amazing. I forgot the other thing I was going to say. So
well, I mean, maybe, to me, it probably rippled down where he interacted differently with his kids, because I did tell, after we had this little interaction and he was telling me about this exercise video he'd been watching and how it was motivating him. And so then I said, yeah, well, I just finished reading Ben's new book and it's just stunning. And I told him the story about Phoebe, and then I could see the wheels in his brain, because he's got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and he's a very good dad. But it makes me go, okay, now you take this concept and you put that in. So I was telling him about this concept of this moment being so precious that it really does change your present when you think about your future. Like, I don't even know how to describe it unless you start to experience it.
Well, here's an example. This was the other thought that just slipped my mind. Is the truth is, like, it's kind of odd because psychologically you've got the past, you've got the present, you've got the future. But once you actually appreciate what the future is, it gives value.
It's good. It's still going.
Okay. Yeah, so as an example, like the Stoics have a concept called memento mori, which is basically the idea that you want to always contemplate and appreciate death because that allows you to live more fully in the present. Knowing that I literally could die tomorrow. I might never see you again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so knowing that that's a possibility, like that's a way that, the future can actually drive a lot more value to the present. It's just like you might, who's to say you or Scott will be around in 20 years. And so
Or
knowing,
tomorrow.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
knowing that, why would you skip this moment rather than
Yeah.
deeply connect? And so that's just another example of how you see the future actually can dramatically impact your present.
Yeah, and I think that right now the world needs love and connection more than ever. I
Totally.
think that um, the human connection and being in the present moment has never been more important. I think we're at a beautiful tipping point in humanity. Like I see so much growth, and that's why, to me, this is divine timing for your book. It feels like divine timing to me. I mean, 2022 that's a kind of feel like a big year. It has felt like a big year, and we've talked about this, right? Yeah.
2022 is a very big year for the world, but also obviously for America. One thing that's interesting, there's a book actually written by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1. Have you ever read that one?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is a brilliant book. It's more for entrepreneurs, but what Peter Thiel does in that book is he talks about how there's 4 kind of fundamental frameworks you can have towards the future. One of them is what he calls definite optimism. And that's basically what he said made America, like led America to going to the moon and revolution, changing the world, is because we had a definite optimism. And what that means is that you have an optimistic view towards the future. It's a very positive future, but it's definite. You also have a very specific view of the future. You got a specific vision. Like as an example, going to the moon. That wasn't an accident. Like we had a goal,
Yeah.
And so whatever view you have towards the future is going to drive how you're acting in the present. And there, just to kind of give the other examples, what Peter Thiel said is he said that it was a definite optimism that led America to becoming what it was, but he felt like America had shifted, and this was 10 years ago when he wrote the book, to what he called an indefinite optimism. And he felt like this isn't a very powerful way of living life, because what an indefinite optimism means is you have an optimism towards the future. You feel like the future is going to be good, but you have no idea what that looks like. You're not definite about it. You're indefinite. You're like, the future's hazy, so that optimism is actually pretty weak. And interestingly, optimism is actually different from hope. Hope in psychology is a lot more specific. In psychology, they call hope the will and the way. And in order to have hope, you have to have very specific, clear goals. You have to have a sense that there's a way to get there, and that you can get there, and you have to have a belief that you have agency, that you can create or find the way to get to your goal. And so hope is actually, and obviously the world needs hope more than anything right now, but hope is very definite. It's not indefinite. But I think so there's 2 other aspects of his framework. He talks about a definite pessimism, where you actually believe the future is going to be really bad, and you have a very specific view of what that means. You have definite views that the future is going to be worse, and here's the reasons why. And then there's indefinite pessimism, where you think that the future is going to be worse, but you just don't know what it's going to look like. And it's interesting with where America's at, because a lot of people, I think, have shifted to more of a pessimistic view of the future. Like they think that the future is going to be worse. They may not know why, and some people actually have specific reasons why they think the future is going down. I myself choose to maintain a definite optimism about my future self, and about my future. And I know that me maintaining that hope and purpose, and that's literally exactly what Frankl said, you need a definite optimism, or else the present really starts weighing you down. I mean, think about where he was. He was in the concentration camp, but obviously there's a lot of division in America. And so in order for you to maintain hope, purpose, and happiness in crazy times, you need a definite optimism. You need a clear future self and a sense of purpose and mission, so that you don't get beat down, I guess, by the craziness around you.
Well, and I think it takes each person setting that example, because I feel that too.
I mean, we all feel it. I mean, it's coming at you pretty hard.
I mean, I feel the optimism.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
No,
me too.
I've had little moments where I go, oh my goodness, this feels really heavy, like the denseness of it all, but they've only been moments, and then I kind of sit with them. I might do a meditation. I might exercise, which will lift me up and lift my spirits up. But you know what? I think the future looks beautiful for all of humanity, not just for Americans, but for people all over the world. I think that we are awakening on a massive scale, and you know what? It's a little bit painful.
So is all growth.
All growth is painful, 100%.
Well, I think what's interesting about that, and this is just another kind of idea, is because you have that view towards the future,
Yeah.
that's going to impact who you're being in the present.
Oh,
Whereas
100%.
if someone on the opposite side of the coin just thinks that this country's going down and that everything stinks, like that view of the future as well is going to impact who a person is being in the present. So whatever view you've committed to in your mind about the future is the driver of your present actions and behavior.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's an invitation for everyone to examine what's the future I've committed to in my mind, because we've all committed to some future that we believe is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's changeable.
Oh, 100%.
Like 100%. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for putting this book out to the universe and to the humanity that's going to read this. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it gets in the hands of as many people. In fact, I might do some kind of contest. I might like buy a couple hundred books from you and give them away to some of you guys, because I really think that this is important. I think it's the best book you've written.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very big concept. It's a timely concept, but it's a necessary concept. I mean, one of the big ideas in psychology, for example, right now as we're filming this, the Olympics are going on.
Yeah.
Right. And how could anyone become an Olympian on accident? Right. Like.
Oh yeah.
So there's a big idea in psychology called deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is basically the idea of developing expertise, and really cool. The research shows that you really can deliberately practice toward anything. If I want to practice, and deliberate practice is challenging, it's outside your comfort zone. It's not just repetition. It actually is to avoid the repetition of your current self habits, and it's actually to push you towards your future self. But what the research shows is that you can't actually engage in deliberate practice towards something without a clear view of your future self. And so as I watch the Olympics, or really anyone who's developed skill at anything, it's because they've had a vision of their future self, and the more specific they got about it, the more committed they got to it, and the more they then worked towards it, it's amazing how much you can transform. And so you can't really engage in true systematic learning without a clear view of your future self and where you're trying to go. So I mean, it's just it's a kind of core basic concept, but it's one that I don't think people take seriously enough.
Yeah, I agree. And I also don't think it's ever too late, because I'll tell you a quick little story. So we had a sleepover with our grandkids this week, and my granddaughter, who's 10, had a gymnastics practice. So she does it twice a week. So I took her and I watched her, and the whole time I was watching her, I was thinking, because she's learning how to get on the beam, and she's learning the bars, and and there were moments where she did some really good stuff, and then there were moments where she was kind of shaky and wobbly, but she kept trying and she kept doing it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I want to do that. Like, I want to go and learn how to balance on a balance beam. Like, why can't I? Why can't? So to me,
the value of what you're saying is that your future self can be totally different than your current self.
100%.
Your current self may not have that skill, but your future self may
Right.
have done a lot of deliberate practice, and you might be able to master on the balance beam.
And at 80, I could be doing things that no 80-year-old
Totally.
would think. You know what I mean? So I was like super motivated watching my 10-year-old granddaughter do these gym, and she the whole time, the whole hour, she did every. I mean, she just tried. She didn't do one perfect. She tried again. She didn't do it perfect again. She tried. She got it. I mean, it was. We all need to remember that we can do that too.
Totally.
So
I think it's healthy to remember that your current self is extremely temporary.
yeah.
That just because you have, wherever you're at right now in your life, your future self will be different and can be very different. And so whether that's learning how to walk on a balance beam, learning a different language, becoming really good with money, learning how to develop beautiful relationships, getting healthy, your current self is very temporary. And so you don't need to overly define yourself by your current self or current limitations. Instead, it's much better, in the terms of Albert Einstein, imagination is more important than knowledge. And so, you can use your future self to guide your actions and behavior in specific ways, and you can watch yourself transform. I mean, both of us are, could point to many examples where our current self is way different than who we were 3, 5, 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And so, you can really accelerate the process by getting clear about the future self and committing to that.
It's been fun, like our little journey, right?
Yeah, it's been way fun.
I always thank Ben's mom, who's my sister, thank you for having such brilliant children. because I have 2 boys, she has the 3 boys, and we, there was a lot of influence that, we've had on each other's kids, and like, I'm always like super grateful because like Ben and I have had a ton of fun just growing our business, motivating each other as entrepreneurs, but my hope for you is that you will realize the moments you have, because as human beings, I believe we're here to grow and learn. I believe that is, what we accomplish on this earth while we're, in these human, physical, beautiful bodies. We're here. We're here to have growth. And I'm telling you, when you miss the moments to give someone a hug, tell them you love them, not brush them away, look them in the eye when you talk to them, put your phone down when you're literally having a conversation with someone, your spouse, your friend, your children, whatever. Don't let those moments go by because you can't get them back. You can't live in the past, but you can definitely live for your future self. And this message, I think, is so powerful.
And you can live as your future self.
Yeah. So before we end this, give us like a sentence about that.
Yeah, I mean,
to me, it's like that's it right there. It's like, okay, motivate. Well, live today as your future self.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the story I gave as Phoebe, but you just think about where you want things to go, and then you do that now. Every time you're intentionally working towards a goal, you're being your future self. So yeah. Every moment I sat down to write that book, even though the book wasn't actually written, I was being my future self. Yeah. So either you're living non-intentionally or you're living intentionally. If you're being non-intentionally, you're probably just on autopilot, being reactive, and that's you actually being your current self.
Yeah.
Your autopilot is just your current habits. It's you on an autopilot, but anytime you're being intentional towards a goal or towards what you want, you actually are being your future self.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, Ben, this is my lovely Ben.
Love you all and love Jane.
Yeah.
It's a huge pleasure.
Yeah, well, the pleasure is all mine because I'm like, you're in town? Okay, come. Okay, guys, so I would suggest if you are feeling it, pick up this book, share it with everyone, buy copies for the people that you love, and this is to simply, I think it's concepts like this that can literally shift humanity right now. I think that this can make a change in the way that we walk into our future by being the future that we want to be. So thanks again, Ben.
Absolutely.
You're awesome. Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon.